I'm Mark, and this is the Mr. Productivity Podcast, the podcast to help solopreneurs banish overwhelm, reduce stress, and get more done. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking with Kitti Andrews, also known as your thought organizer. She is a highly sought-after expert in decluttering space and brain. For over 20 years, she has been helping people get unstuck and out of a state of overwhelm by getting their physical and mental surroundings under control. Before we dive into today's show, I want to invite you to sign up for the 21-day productivity challenge. As a solopreneur, you've got a lot to do, and this challenge will help you be more productive at doing it. Invest just 1 minute in reading one tip a day that will transform your productivity habits in less than 1 month. Sign up for the 21-day productivity challenge. It's free at MrProductivity.com. Remember, Mr. is all spelled out M-I-S-T-E-R, MrProductivity.com. Kitti, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I'm absolutely delighted.
If the listener had any idea how long it took us to connect, the technology gremlins were trying to prevent this podcast from being recorded, but we overcame, and here we are.
Absolutely, and I learned some valuable lessons along the way. Thank you for teaching me.
Okay, so I got to start out with your website, because your website got me anyways to stop. Declutter the brain. Declutter the brain. Listener, if you don't stop when I said those words, then there's something amiss with you, because what does it mean to declutter the brain, Kitti?
Oh, good heavens. It's an excellent question. Thank you for asking that, because that expression was taught to me by a coach, and I hadn't heard it either. But the more I have been helping people to declutter the space, it has just naturally followed that they've been decluttering their brain as well. And I don't mean that, I mean not only the brain, but the 5 pillars of your life, not only your home, but your heart, meaning relationships, your health, your habits, and your head. Hence, declutter the brain. It all just kind of comes together in a magic circle, Mark.
I love that, because recently, about 3 or 4 months ago, I went through my Marie Kondo phase. I think everyone goes through a Marie Kondo phase. And I just got rid of so much stuff in my house, donated a bunch of books to the library or people who wanted them, donated clothes I never wore. And the freedom I felt without having all this clutter, because I have become a minimalist, that frees your brain, because now you don't have all this stuff around your house and you can actually have the space to think.
I couldn't have said it better, because you just really need to be able to, from a practical point of view, be able to see what you have. And there is really something magical about, in an energetic field even, of letting go and starting fresh. And again, seeing what you have, because a lot of clutter will carry ghosts from the past.
I got this visual of Casper the Friendly Ghost, but I love my father tremendously. He's 82 years old. And one of the things I've been trying to work on him with is that he gets all these catalogs in the mail. And I'm like, Dad, why do those even make it into your house? You go get your mail through the garage. When you come back in, stop off at the recycle bin or the garbage can, rip your name off, and just throw those in the garbage. But what he does, and I'm really trying to break him of his habit, he stacks them up. Then he gets frustrated because the stack got too big. Then he sits here for 2 hours. And then I said, Dad, why are you looking through these catalogs? Just get rid of them. I said, you are your own worst enemy. So that stuff never even makes it in my house, but that's just a small place where people can start. If you got these tiny piles everywhere, your brain is going, have to take care of that, have to take care of that, have to take care of that. And then you don't have any energy to be productive.
And you made an excellent point there about thinking, oh, I've got to get I've got to get to that kind of thing. And this is just contributing to your mental clutter. And I have asked people many times, which bothers you more, your physical clutter or your mental clutter? And 10 out of 10 people have said. Mental clutter, Kitti. We know how to pick things up. We just don't do it or we're overwhelmed. But the mental clutter, because there's so much of it, and especially in today's busy digital world, like what we were just dealing with, it's just compounded massively. And I'm on a mission to help. There's a lot of clutter that is forced upon us, especially in the digital age. But if you can simplify as much as you can, the stuff that you can simplify, then you can deal with stuff that's kind of beyond your control. Wouldn't you agree?
I do agree. And I have been saying for years, complexity is the gateway to procrastination. So the more you make things complex, the less likely you're going to do them. So I'm like, keep it simple. Don't make it any more complicated than it has to be. So I will tell people, when you are overwhelmed, when you are stressed, when you just want to pull your hair out, which doesn't apply to me because I have a bald head. But anyways, when you get to that state, the first thing, and tell me if you disagree with me, I don't think you will. The first thing you got to do is stop and maybe go someplace and be quiet for a few minutes, because when you're in that state, as Tony Robbins talks about state all the time,
Yep.
you can't think clearly. So I think the best thing you can do, first of all, is just stop. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And you're making me think of Brendan Burchard.
Yes.
has a wonderful way of explaining that and giving you a little bit of a grounding, where you take a moment before you're about to start a task. And I'm paraphrasing here, but you take a moment to stop before the task you're about to start. And you may say, thank you very much to the universe. And then you say, all right, what is my primary purpose on the task that I am about to do? And it only takes about 30, 45 seconds, but I do that quite regularly, and I find it really does help, especially if you happen to be ADHD and your brain is all over the place. You need that grounding. You need to just slow down just for a minute, and then you're just fine.
Yeah. Now I just want to, because you mentioned ADHD, one of the things that really, really hits a nerve with me is people who say I'm ADHD or ADD. And I'm like, oh, so you got diagnosed? Oh, no, I just know. No, that's not how it works. You have to go to a licensed professional and get diagnosed. There's a lot of people go to Dr. Google and they go, well, yeah, I have that. I have, this weird disease that 2 people in the world have. Go to a professional. If you think you're suffering from attention disorder, go to a professional who is trained to diagnose you. Don't self-diagnose yourself. Don't go to Dr. Google.
Amen.
So I want to talk to you about one of the ways I have recently started dealing with decluttering my brain. So I have an iPhone, and one of the things they introduced with iOS 15 is something called focus mode, which is a new and improved do not disturb. Do not disturb was all or nothing. Well, the problem with that is you may want to get certain notifications come through, like your calendar for, like, I don't know, a podcast interview. And
Yes.
you can't do that with D&D. So what I have done is I use 2 focus modes, and my phone is on focus mode the entire day. So at night from 8 p.m. till 5:30 in the morning, it's on sleep mode, which nobody can get through. And then from 5:30 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, I'm on work mode, and I will allow like calendar alerts or the weather alerts. I'm really big on my credit card or debit card alerts because I want to know where my card's being used. That's, I've gotten burned a couple times by not having that enabled. And then I can allow certain people to message me. Not everybody, but certain people. And what's amazing, if a telemarketer calls, my phone doesn't even ring because they're obviously not my favorites. And I have just been doing that for about 2 weeks. I can tell you already, I feel such a sense of calm because now I am in complete control of what notifications are going to bother me. And I'm not a zero notifications guy. I'm an intentional notifications guy. So I want very few, but very essential notifications that serve me to come through. And I just encourage people, if they don't have an iPhone, you probably have some feature on Android. Figure out how to use it so you can get those important calendar alerts, but you don't get the social media and all the other nonsense that's cluttering up your brain.
I'd love to speak into that just for a moment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I have an iPhone 13. I have it on full do not disturb all the time just because I get distracted easily. And frankly, the little noises and beeps and bops, they drive me absolutely bonkers. And my neighbor, his phone is going beep, beep, boop, boop, all the time. And I say, how can you deal with that? Because your brain is kind of saying, oh, is that something I should be looking at?
I always say on the show, do what works for you. So I think of all the notifications I have enabled, which is probably about a dozen, only about 3 of them have the sound enabled. So a lot of people don't understand that probably on Android as well as iPhone. I know iPhone for sure because I have an iPhone 13 Pro Max. You can go in there and say, I want this notification, but I don't want it to make a sound. And I don't want it to be on my lock screen. I just want it to go to the notification center, which means I actually have to pick up my phone and go to the notification center. So there's ways you can craft your phone to get the notifications that you want. In other words, that will serve you and work that way. But I would encourage people to say, oh, I never used the focus mode. Then try it out. You won't know if it's going to work for you unless you try it out. Maybe 0 notifications works for you. But I always say those people who say no notifications, I'm like, well, how do you know when a meeting's coming up? Coaching client, podcast interview. Well, I have it in my head. Well, that's a dangerous thing to do. Keep things in your head. So I just tell people, figure out a system that works for you and then tweak it as you hear podcasts or read books or whatever. Go, oh, I'm going to try that out. Have an open mind. That's how I got to be where I am now. A year ago, I didn't do these things. So I'm constantly learning on how I can get better. I mean, I watch Brendan Burchard all the time. I'm like, I learned something from him just today. I was watching one of his videos. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Never thought about that. So don't think that one person or one podcast or one book is going to give you everything you need to know about decluttering your brain or being productive. We are just giving you ideas, and you need to take these ideas, dear listener, and go, well, that made me think maybe I should try what Kitti said, and you never know what's going to happen.
That's right. One size does not fit all. And what works for me may not work for you. I agree with you completely about the notifications on screen for some things that, that I need to know. But other than that, so much of it is unnecessary clutter.
Yeah, we all have those people whose phone goes off all the time. I'm one of those people, if I get pulled into a meeting and forget to mute my phone, it's probably not going to go off because I'm very strategic on my notifications. See, that should be the goal. We all know those people, Kitti, that have every notification enabled and their phone sounds like a little girl's music box. I agree with you. How in the world can you get anything done? How can you have a conversation with someone when the phone keeps going off like that? So that you, listener, if you think you can operate like that, I want you to go to my website, MrProductivity.com, click the contact tab, send me a message. Cause I want to know how you do it because I don't think it's possible to be able to do that.
And it messes with your productivity so much, coming to Mr. Productivity. All of that clutter and distractions, we're not saying anything new here, Mark, it just really messes with your productivity.
Are you one of the million? Join over 1 million people, which may be a slight hyperbole, and get productivity tips that will help you live a more productive life. Head on over to MrProductivity.com/insider.
Even just by sucking up that mental energy, the little phone, the battery icon at the top of your head there, and you just see it going down and down and down and down because of distraction. We only have so much mental energy. Isn't it important to spend it on the important things?
Yes. And matter of fact, on the iPhone, you can have the battery percentage on there. I found that caused me anxiety. So I just have you can't get rid of the battery icon, but don't have the percentage on there because then you're like, oh, it went from 50 to 49% and just turn the percentage off. Okay. And people are getting so focused on the wrong things. Do you want to become successful? I promise you, Brendan Burchard, Tony Robbins, they don't sit there and have all the notifications turned on. They don't look at the battery indicator. They got more important things to do. And I beg you, listener, please know what the important things are and focus on those because you're working on the minutia and that is going to make you unproductive. So when you get a client and they come to you like they come to me and they don't say they want to be more productive, they say, holy crap, I'm so overwhelmed. What are some of the first steps that you deal them with? Because they probably come to you and they're like, oh my gosh, I am so overwhelmed. I'm so stressed. And, obviously it's like a ball of yarn. You have to start, or I should say onion would probably be a better analogy. You have to start peeling back the onion to find out what the root cause is. But how do you go about that?
They think that the physical clutter is usually 90% of the time they come to me and they think that the physical clutter is their problem. And then, as you mentioned, an excellent analogy about the onion, you start to declutter a little bit of the space, which I do have a process for that. And then it becomes revealed that they're having relationship problems or their job isn't going the way it should. I can share an example if you like.
Sure.
Sarah, we started with her physical clutter. She couldn't, walking into her sun porch to even get into her house. She basically kind of had to tiptoe through the clutter. So we started working on that. And then within about a month, she said, my husband said X to me and I didn't like it very much. And I said, okay, what's the why here? Has he ever said anything like this to you before? And she says, and they've been married 25 years. She said, come to think of it, yes, he has said those kind of things before, but just kind of slightly demeaning comments. And she said, I never really noticed it before. That's my example of once you start peeling back the physical clutter, then your brain is more open to seeing other things that are happening in your life. And then we end up starting to declutter the 5 pillars.
When you're talking there about the Sarah, I think that's what her name was. Mm-hmm. When I first got to be a productivity guy, I had no idea I was going to be part therapist. I'm not a trained therapist, but as I talk to people and like you mentioned, I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. I'm missing something because when clients come to you, they tend not to be vulnerable when they first come to you and they tell you their issues. I'm like, that's too simple of an issue. And you start digging. And I never wanted to be a therapist. It wasn't a life goal of mine, but it's part of what we do. We have to actually get into people's minds because in order to help them be more productive and less overwhelmed, we have to understand the root cause. And sometimes that takes some painful digging on our part.
It certainly does.
So let's talk about the 5 pillars of life again. Now, could you run through those again for us? Because a lot of people, when they listen to the show, they're out walking the dog or on a run or something like that. So what are those 5 pillars again?
Your health, your heart, meaning your spirituality or your relationships, your habits, your home, and your head, your brain.
Which one, in your experience, I'm asking you to look at your past clients and the people you've met in social media. Which one do most people have a problem with?
Habits.
That's interesting because I think people don't realize that we all have habits.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are intentional with their habits and some people are not. And there's good habits and bad habits. Smoking's a bad habit. It's still a habit. But so I think people need to, this is a little exercise for the listener is when you get a chance, get a notebook, carry it around with you. And every time you think you're doing something habitually, write it down. Because I think people are doing their habits so subconsciously, they don't realize the habits. And then when they get this list, then sit down and go, okay, is this a good habit or a bad habit? And then start working on getting rid of the negative habits. What do you think about that homework assignment for them?
It's a wonderful idea. The only fly in that ointment could be that some of these habits are so ingrained that you may not even realize that you're doing it. For example, I'm doing a video series as we speak of decluttering your self-talk based on Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. You just mentioned Tony Robbins. And how many times do we say, I should? do something, or I can't do something, or I have to, or things like this. These are verbal habits. They sabotage you before you even start. They're putting negative messages in your head. So there's an example of a habit that once you get out of it, you're decluttering your brain right there. You're decluttering that one habit of putting negative messages into your head.
Yeah, I think there's an epidemic of negative self-talk in our world today. I see people calling themselves idiots, moron, I'll never figure it out. And I'm like, so you're already planting that seed in your subconscious mind that you won't be able to do whatever it is you're trying to do. And I believe you should put a positive spin on it and say, how am I going to do this? Instead of saying I can't, say, how am I going to solve this problem? Because when you use the word how, now your brain looks at the problem totally different. Now it looks in terms of how can I solve this problem? But when you say I can't, well, the brain goes, well, okay, my work's done here. I don't do anything.
That's right. The way that you're suggesting puts you in power mode. It puts you into action mode. And the other way, you're basically powerless. And people can say, as you just said, my work here is done. Well, I'm sure that your listeners don't want to be that lazy person. They're not that lazy person that it just settles for second best. They want the best for themselves.
And you mentioned the word action. When people ask me, what can I do when I'm not feeling motivated or I'm feeling kind of blah? I say, go do something. Action solves so many problems. You don't have to go work on that project or that spreadsheet, but go do something. Take the dog for a walk, cut your lawn, work in the garden. Most people, though, when they get like that, they go to their phones and start scrolling through social media or go watch a video or 10 on Netflix. And I just encourage people, when you are not feeling motivated, go do something. Don't harm other people, but go do something and it'll change your state.
Yes. It's something as simple as unloading part of the dishwasher. I don't have time to unload the whole dishwasher. Well, just unload maybe 6 coffee cups. I have done this and it just kind of refocuses me. Okay. All right. Let's move forward.
Well, as we bring our time together to a close, is there any wisdom that you want to make sure the listener gets? Because I know you covered a lot. We covered a lot in the show, and I don't want people to go, oh my gosh, what's the most important thing? Well, we can't tell you what the most important thing is, obviously, because we don't know you, listener. But what is the parting piece of wisdom or insight that you want to make sure the listener hears clearly?
I'm going to paraphrase you. You mentioned at the beginning, we were talking about keeping things simple. And I heartily agree with that. Simplify whatever it is that you're doing to its basic denominator. And if that happens to be your wardrobe, anything like that, simplify it down, get started, and don't give up on yourself. That would be my biggest thing, is do one thing, do it consistently. Even if it's you want to declutter your bathroom, just take out one empty shampoo bottle at a time. One thing per day out of wherever it is you're decluttering. One thing per day. And suddenly your bathroom or your bedroom is going to be, wow, geez, this looks pretty good. And it took no effort at all. So simplify it down as much as you can.
Excellent. So people want to know more about Kitti and her mission in life. How would they go to find you on the World Wide Web?
Go to declutterthebrain.com. There is a PDF there, 7 easy steps to conquer your physical and mental clutter. And they can reach me there. And also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube.
You're everywhere.
I try to be.
All right. Well, Kitti, I want to thank you so much for overcoming the technological gremlins to make this interview happen, because a lot of people would have just given up, but you stuck with it. You overcame, and I really appreciate it, because the wisdom you shared with us on the show today is really important. And listener, remember, there's no magic listening. There's magic in doing. So, Kitti, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Mr. Productivity Podcast. Before you go, would you please do me and Kitti a huge favor? You probably have 2 or 3 of your friends that could use what we talked about in the episode today. So be a good friend, smash that share icon on whatever podcast player you're listening to us on, and share this with them. Kitti and I will both be very thankful you did that. If you want to find out more about me, to sign up for the free 21-day productivity challenge and more, you can do it at MrProductivity.com. Remember, that's Mr. all spelled out, M-I-S-T-E-R, MrProductivity.com. Until we're back with another episode, which will be real soon, my friend, remember, stay productive and stay positive.